China is quietly buying Europe. Not with tanks or soldiers, but with money. Over the past 2 decades, Chinese investors, often backed by Beijing itself, have been strategically acquiring companies, ports, factories, and critical infrastructure across the continent. And nowhere has this trend been more visible and more controversial than in Germany, the industrial powerhouse of Europe. While many saw these deals as win-win cooperation, others are now warning Europe may be selling its future. Let's start with one of the most famous cases, KUKA Robotics. In 2016, a Chinese appliance manufacturer called Midea made a takeover bid for KUKA, one of Germany's crown jewels in advanced robotics and automation. The deal caused shockwaves. KUKA was central to Germany's industry for .0 vision, the future of manufacturing. Allowing a Chinese company to own it meant handing over not just machines, but technology, patents, and know-how. The German government debated blocking the takeover, but in the end, Chancellor Angela Merkel's administration approved it. KUKA was sold, and with it, a piece of German technological leadership. This was not an isolated case. Chinese firms have bought into German automotive suppliers, machine tool makers, and even biotech companies. Ports like Hamburg became part of Beijing S-Belt and Road Initiative, the vast infrastructure project designed to expand China's influence across Eurasia. These investments are not random, they are targeted. China wants access to advanced technology, logistics hubs, and industrial know-how. By buying, instead of building, they skip decades of development. Why did Germany allow this? Partly because of a belief in globalization. Angela Merkel's government built close ties with China, seeing it as both a crucial market for German exports and a partner in global trade. At the same time, German business elites welcome Chinese capital. For companies struggling with competition and costs, a Chinese buyer offering billions looked like salvation. And politicians loved the message. Foreign investors believe in Germany. But there's a darker side. When Chinese companies buy European firms, the technology doesn't stay in Europe. It gets transferred to China. Jobs that once were secure in Germany may move abroad. Entire supply chains become dependent on decisions made in Beijing. And when it comes to infrastructure, like ports and energy, ownership means influence. If a crisis emerges, Europe could find itself vulnerable to political pressure. This is not just theory. In countries like Greece, where China controls the port of Piraeus, Beijing has used its influence to push political decisions in Brussels. When the EU wanted to issue strong statements against China's human rights abuses, Greece, under heavy Chinese economic influence, blocked them. That's how financial power turns into political leverage. In Washington, alarm bells have been ringing for years. The United States sees China's buying spree as part of a bigger geopolitical strategy. By embedding itself in Europe's economy, Beijing gains not only profit, but strategic control. The U.S. has pressured allies, including Germany, to restrict Chinese investment in critical sectors like 5G networks. The fight over Huawei was just one example, but Europe is divided. Some leaders still see China as an economic opportunity, while others fear dependence. Friedrich Merz, the current CDU leader, has criticized Germany's past China policy, arguing that Merkel's government underestimated the risks. Yet, German companies remain heavily reliant on exports to China, especially in the car industry. For Volkswagen, BMW, and Mercedes, China is their most important market. That makes it hard for Berlin to say no. So, where does this leave Europe? On one hand, Chinese money has saved struggling companies, secured jobs, and created new opportunities. On the other, Europe may be trading short-term gains for long-term dependence. If Beijing controls key parts of the European economy, how independent can Europe really be? What happens if China uses this leverage during a political conflict over Taiwan, for example? Would Germany risk its economic ties to stand by its allies? History shows us that power rarely shifts overnight, but it does shift. Today, Europe is still strong, but the balance is moving. Every company sold, every port acquired, every piece of technology transferred tips the scales a little further. China's strategy is long-term. It doesn't need to control Europe today. It only needs to keep buying, piece by piece, until one day the picture is complete. The story of China buying Europe is not about free markets or fair trade. It's about geopolitics, influence, and the future of power. For investors, it's a warning sign. The companies you trust may not stay European forever. For citizens, it's a question. Who will own the industries that shape your future? And for Europe's leaders, it is a test. Can they protect sovereignty in a world where money speaks louder than politics? Because make no mistake, China is not just investing, it's executing a strategy. And the future of Europe may depend on whether its leaders and its people realize that before it is too late.